Step Therapy 911 presents Stephanie Samuels. Straight Talk. Join us every Sunday, 7 p.m. live Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. It's real, raw, and uncensored. And now, here's your host, Stephanie Samuels. Stop the stigma.
Today, everybody, I have to put my glasses on. This is what happens when you're over 50 and you've got to read a bio that's that's really small. So you can tell who's under 50 right now on the Zoom meeting. Anyway, true honor to have both of you here. So I'm going to start off with Shelley Jones. So please apologize the fact that I'm going to be reading this, but got to read it and was just so moved by both of you. But I want our listeners to truly hear where you guys come from and why this is so important today. So Shelley Jones graduated from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, with a Bachelor of Science in Administration of Justice, and went on to work for the Missouri Probation and Parole as a Missouri and Probation and Parole officer. In 1993, she was hired as patrol officer by the Columbia, Missouri Police Department. She joined their new motorcycle unit 10 years later. She retired an assistant chief after 21 years of service. In 2014, upon retiring from law enforcement, Shelley joined National COPS, Concerns of Police Survivors, as the Director of Operations. In April of 2020, Shelley and Laurie Putnam, with the blessings of the support of COPS, started a new not-for-profit organization, Survivors of Police Suicide Foundation, known as SBS, whose mission is to foster hope by uniting survivors of law enforcement suicide to support one another and honor our fallen heroes. Shelley is a recipient of the Medal of Valor after being shot in the line of duty. She is a surviving co-worker of Columbia police officer Michael Goldberg, who died by suicide in 2007, and Officer Molly Thomas Bowden, who was killed in the line of duty in 2005. Laurie Putnam. Laurie began her 10-year career with Concerns of Police Survivors in 2009. During her tenure at COPS, her responsibilities grew as the organization expanded. She began as the recipient and as a receptionist and quickly advanced to research coordinator. As research coordinator, Laurie took the lead for the National Police Week registration, oversaw the operations and compliance of 55 COPS chapters across the nation, and provided guidance and assistance to survivors, including the filing of public safety officers' benefits that are known as PSOB. Laurie was promoted to Director and Chapter and Survivor Support in 2014. In her new role, she worked closely with survivors in helping them navigate National Police Week, filing for benefits, connecting them with peer support and mental health resources, assisting them in getting involved in their local COPS chapter, and applying for scholarships. Laurie's compassion and commitment to survivors is unwavering. Over the years, Laurie fielded many requests for assistance for survivors of law enforcement officers who died by suicide. She recognized that there is a lack of resources available that address the needs of this population. In 2020, with support of the National COPS organization, Laurie and Shelley followed their calling and started Survivors of Blue Suicide Foundation, SBS. So amazing. This has just been one of those topics that truly for years has been the greatest taboo, that with the help of Blue Help over the years, with the help of many different people like yourselves that just this has touched them in so many ways. I don't know anybody that has been in law enforcement, that works with law enforcement, that has not been touched by suicide. And just how, unfortunately, this system ends up re-victimizing victims, and how these officers should never be judged by how they die, but how they live. And
Exactly.
your organization is truly looking at acknowledging that. So, you know, I know about cops, certainly not enough to do an hour show, but enough about it to talk and not be an idiot, but just the amazing programs that cops have. And then to be able to do this, and having worked with line of duty death widows, how important being able to go to a kids camp for the children, spouse retreats, co-workers, and to hear what you guys are doing, and to be able to bring people together that can share similar experiences, similar pains, it is just incredible. So I'm going to turn this over to you guys. I want you to take up the time. I will interject, but truly, truly excited to be able to have both of you on to share this, because this is what's going to be done right. And being able to do this, and I know that you guys are so passionate about it. You know, I know that Karen's so passionate, and to be able to bring people that are just have one mission, take care of fallen families, just incredible. So go ahead.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you taking the time to let us have this conversation. Survivors of Blue Suicide started as a conversation with some of the board members from Concerns of Police Survivors. A couple of years ago, they started talking on how were they going to be able to help the families of officers who died by suicide. And through that 2 years, it got brought up and it got dismissed, it got brought up. They were trying to figure it out because COP's mission is very clear. It's to help rebuild the shattered lives of officers who die in the line of duty. And so it came to a point where they were trying to figure it out, and I went to the executive director, Diane Bernhardt, and told her I wanted to lead the charge on this. And I had been aware that Laurie had gone to Diane also and wanted to.
We can't, so they can't.
You hear me?
I can, but they're saying that they can't hear you. So what do you need? Go ahead, and should she undo her? Oh, me? Hang on. Let me see if it goes to me. All right. Go ahead and talk.
Oh, okay. So can you hear me now?
Are they able to hear? Hang on. They're live streaming. So go ahead and
keep going.
Yep.
Okay. And so when I went to Diane, I knew that Laurie was also interested because she had gone to Diane. So I made a proposal to the National Cops Board, and they offered to help start a new nonprofit organization. COPS was at its maximum capacity. It's growing rapidly, and it's nearly doubled in size since I started working for COPS in 2014. So fast forwarding, COPS approved to help start this organization. So we are working out of the National Cops Office, and we are housed there for a very nominal fee to help pay for like office supplies and stuff like that. So we are working there, and they're answering the phones for us. But if somebody calls, they're still going to answer it. Concerns of Police Survivors. You just have to ask for Laurie or I.
Okay. I'm going to have you go back because there's a problem hearing you on the audio in the beginning. If you could just, because I think it's so important that everybody knows how this was created, the idea behind it, and kind of how you got there. So
okay.
I want to make sure that's
okay. The COPS that's okay. The COPS National Board had been talking about wanting to help the families of officers who die by suicide. And so they had been talking about it for 2.5 years. And so I finally went to Diane and I said, hey, I would like to take the charge on this, take the lead. And I knew Laurie was interested. So I asked Laurie if she wanted to leave COPS with me and go and start this new organization. So Laurie has left her very secure job and decided to go on this adventure with me. So we literally co-founded Survivors of Blue Suicide Foundation. And we're just getting started. We made the public announcement, about 6-7 weeks ago? And we've had an overwhelming response. We've got a lot of support from the law enforcement community, and we've had a lot of survivors connect with us. And when they go on our website and fill out a form, Laurie literally picks up the phone and calls and talks to every one of them. That is one of Laurie's biggest attributes is her ability to communicate with the survivors. She's been doing it for 10 years, and she's very good at it. We are now in the process of planning the retreats, and I'm going to let Laurie tell you about those.
Well, thanks for having us on. It's an honor to be able to talk about this finally and get it out there in the public. It's so important to us, to law enforcement community, to help these families. So the idea that got this started was obviously concerns of police survivors, and watching the miracle that is their retreats and their programming has been amazing for the past 10 years. Watching what they do for survivors, they're doing it right. They have an amazing staff there that truly, truly cares, trying to make things better and easier for the survivors. So when we got this started, it would be mirrored after COPS. So in 2021, we will be having at least 2 programs. We know now probably a spouse's retreat and one other, due to funding, availability, COVID-19, all the things that are in our way right now. But the basis behind those retreats is peer support and gathering survivors together to understand each other. And they're all there for the same reason. So they've all had a loss, either a line of duty death or a death by suicide. But no other person is really going to be able to understand as good as a spouse to a spouse and a parent to a parent and a sibling to a sibling. And that's the foundation of how COPS works, which will be the foundation of how SBS works. It's all about peer support. It's all about survivors helping survivors. So when a death happens, and it's not an if, it's a when, there are survivors there to be able to support and help other survivors. So with our retreats, they're over a weekend, Friday to a Monday. They get to us, and when they get to us, we take it from there. So we have a variety of social time, getting to know each other. We have wellness support staff there to help run facilitated conversations between survivors, activities that give survivors kind of a strength with each other, cheering each other on, supporting each other. It's kind of like a day in their life. You climb a tower every day. Every day you get up and you keep going, and then you go to bed and you climb that tower every single day. That's the day of a survivor after you lose somebody that you love. So those programs, watching people come in on a Friday saying, who are these people and what are they doing, to the scared emotion, to Monday after spending 3 days with people talking about their loss, talking about their loved one, listening to other people, challenging themselves physically and mentally, laughing, crying. Monday, when they go get on the bus, they don't want to go. And then you go home. But when you go home, you have this whole world out there to help you. You have spouses. It no longer matters if they're in your neighborhood or they're next door. You have a cell phone, you have Zoom. We all know we've been placed in this virtual world in 2020. But there's a whole other level of connection out there that they have. So when they're having a bad day, and you go to specific friends when something's wrong. Everybody does, that's natural. So survivors tend to go to each other because they understand the challenges, whether they're raising kids or if they're their parents and they lost their only child, or they have siblings that are struggling, or children that have lost their parents, they truly understand. So it's this connection just that's amazing to watch. And it's been a true honor of my life to watch it through COPS and to get that passion for law enforcement, to be able to go do this for another set of survivors for law enforcement. It's because of them that we can do this now, that we can help. So.
I know when you talk about the tower, I know, and I had Dawn Stevens who had lost her husband.
Love her. She's awesome. She's
And
awesome.
one of the things that Dawn talked about when she came back was that tower, and truly it was so wonderful to see almost this metamorphosis of her, and the sense of security and just kind of overcoming fear and all the things that tower had represented.
Yeah. Well, even if you don't get all the way up, it's as far as you can go. Like if all you do is get up tomorrow and breathe, as a survivor after this loss, you're doing it. And that's what it is. It doesn't matter if you get to the top. It doesn't matter if you get to the first platform or the second ring. It's how you're doing it. You're trying, you're getting there. So
I think, it's so much about the support that's there, whether you just look at the tower, it connects you when you look at the tower, it's knowing that you're not looking at it alone, that whether you choose to try it or not. So being able to do that is just kind of amazing.
Yeah. And having those people surround you, they're an amazing group of people.
And they cheer you on. They encourage you to keep going, and the self-confidence that it builds, because you're on that ground initially looking up and you're thinking, oh, geez. And when you get to the top and you're looking down, you're thinking, yay. And so they get so much more than just climbing a tower out of it.
No, absolutely. And to be able to do this for all survivors is, as you said, is just wonderful. And law enforcement so often, obviously they certainly stick together, but when you police in one state, you kind of lose the breadth of how big you really are, and that when you get together for police week, for something like this, and you're bringing in widows from all over the country, and widowers, it really helps you understand that you're a much larger part of something. I know that when I had founded Copline, kind of one of the things I hadn't thought about was just the uniqueness in, like when you belong. I mean, and Shelley, you would certainly understand this more than anybody else. So you're part of the motorcycle division. So you guys become tight in your own division. And,
yes, you do.
So you build a different level of rapport, and that's not unique for law enforcement. That's indicative of whatever unit that you're part of. And so what I hadn't really thought about was that by the time people retire and want to volunteer for, whether it's going to be survivors of police suicide, whether it's Copline, doesn't make a difference. You can name your not-for-profit, but they've kind of now once again reconfigured that world. So now these people have a very specific desire to help with suicides, and in my case with answering the lines for officers or their families that are calling that need assistance, and you build a really unique relationship in that. So we find on Copline, that your partner for the shift could be halfway across the country, but kind of that bond that exists. So really being able to look at that is wonderful. I mean, and that's what you guys do. And, and that's what you were talking about, Laurie, is really kind of creating that. And it takes a very special type of woman to be able to make those phone calls, Laurie, and to be able to field them, as reading, when you help survivors, when you're working for cops and you're the first call, just the emotions that are involved, and really kind of how draining that can be on the call taker, not just the caller. And now to be able to take all of that and be able to continue to use it to continue to help widows and widowers that have lost their loved ones to suicide, and be able to take the same tools and techniques and be able to do this with the same level of love and compassion is just tremendous.
Well, thank you. I've still got a long list to go. They come in faster than I can call them. So,
and God willing, one day that will change. But
We're hoping.
I mean,
We're hoping.
And that's what we keep working towards, you know, with different organizations, you know, Blue Help wanting to get out there and certainly do the education, and, you know, kind of all of us being part of the solution, because that's what it's about. It's not about politics. It's not about, you know, asses. It's just about let's work together. We've got one goal. It's beautiful when everybody has one goal.
To help the survivors.
Exactly.
All we want to do is help survivors.
It's helping survivors, and it's helping prevent, you know, the suicides. So, you know, and everybody's got their hands on taking care of them. And for you guys being able to, you know, after the act is completed, being able to help honor them, help, you know, get the services that are needed. I can't, you know, Shelley, when I read your bio, I mean, certainly one of the things that stood out was, you know, Officer Goldberg, who had taken his life. And that was in 2007. I just wanted to make sure I don't screw that up. The world was different. It's 13 years ago.
Very much so.
So if you could kind of share, if you don't mind, and I hadn't discussed this, it's your, you know, your department, how they handled it, what the stigma was back then, and kind of to now, because I know that there's been all sorts of issues with, do you send in an honor guard? Are they allowed to have, you know, police funerals? All this stuff that is, you know, still kind of out there, that hopefully with everybody working together, we'll be able to kind of get some standard operating procedure also done throughout the country, which would be quite lovely. So if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing that, because that's been quite something.
Well, you know, Michael Goldberg didn't work at Columbia for very long when he took his own life. I did not know him very well, and I did not work with him on the same shift or anything. But he was still a Columbia police officer. And it's that police bond that we're all connected with, like you said. And I remember getting that phone call. My sergeant called and shared that with me, and it was horrific. It was just like, oh my God. And your thought process is, how could anyone do this? You know, I was the typical person that says, why would they choose to do this? Okay, let's just be honest. That was me. And we talked about it a little bit, but nobody ever talked about it a lot. So I reached out, and this is the sad reality of this. His wife, I reached out to her the other day, and it was the first time I had talked to her in 13 years. Yeah, that's how sad that was. And so we connected, and she signed up for this organization, and I'm very proud of her for doing that. And I'm very appreciative, because if you think about it, with me not having any conversation with her in 13 years, and I message her and say, hey, would you mind talking to me? She could have just told me, just, you know, don't bother me. And she didn't. So I remember sitting in the chief's office and having a conversation with him about, why are we not treating this just like we did when Molly died, who died in the line of duty? And they proceeded to explain to me the reasoning behind that. And it's still the reasoning for why they don't do it. A lot of agencies don't do it today. They don't want to incentivize, and they don't want to glorify it. And so that was their reasoning. Now, we treated the family very well. Kim confirmed that for me, that the Columbia Police Department treated the family very well, which I'm very proud of, the fact that they did that. Because 13 years ago, nobody talked about any of this. There was zero discussion. it was never discussed in the department very much. And it just, just kind of faded into the woodwork. And that's not how it needs to happen. They need to talk about it. We need to keep talking about it. The stigma and all of those buzzwords that go with it will not go away unless we talk about it. And, we have some families who don't want anyone to know that their family member died by suicide. And I in the big picture of things, I get that. But if we never talk about it, we're never going to be able to prevent it. And so this organization is going to get people to start talking about it. They're already talking. A lot of the major law enforcement organizations are working on how to address this. You were in Florida, and you did the presentation. And so they're already talking about this. But we're going to get everyone talking about it because we can't prevent it if we won't talk about it. So
the frustrating part, and I'm sure that you've experienced this too, is, Florida was certainly not my first rodeo in testifying, and it certainly was not my third, nor probably my fifth. So part of it is frustrating, though I do feel that there is some movement, that there is clearly a difference between 5 years ago testifying and talking and this past time. And kind of interesting. So, Michael died, you said, 13 years ago. So 9 years later is when, kind of Blue Help went in your face with, when are you going to deal with this? And, and kind of hasn't let go of this has to be talked about. And absolutely what you were saying is the stigma, the misconception still of, if you talk about suicide, then people are going to kill themselves. I have a sizable law enforcement practice. I have never asked anybody if they were thinking of killing themselves, where they got pissed off at me and left my office because they weren't, or that I had planted a seed in their head when they weren't suicidal, that I've now made them suicidal. I mean, that's kind of the greatest kind of misnomer in all of this. That if we talk about it, it's kind of like when we were growing up, if you don't talk about sex, your kids aren't going to have it.
This is true.
Well, that didn't work all that well with all those unplanned pregnancies. Now, did it?
No, exactly.
So, kind of looking at it in a similar way of, what are we talking about now? Sex education. We're starting them at like 5th grade. Wouldn't that be something if we started talking about suicide prevention in 5th grade? What a concept.
Yeah.
And we made that perfectly normal. But somehow or another, it's not okay and it's not normal to talk about that. And yet we look at the numbers. We look at the losses. We look at the carnage. It was said, Dr. Schneidman, I actually was quite blessed. I went to UCLA and had Dr. Schneidman, who's one of the founders of the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Center, the oldest hotline in the country. He was the leading thanatologist of the world, whose study of death. He looked like death, I have to tell you. He hung out most of the time in morgues, but kind of brilliant in being able to really understand the importance of suicide and suicide prevention, and of hotlines, and how do we, as a community, start making that, as you say, normal? And after somebody dies by suicide, being able to address it. I know one of the things that we've all looked at is the role that post-traumatic stress disorder plays in an officer taking their life, which then, snowballs back. So now you have to go back. What kind of, what are departments doing to take care of their own? When it comes to some of the psychological injuries and cumulative stress, and just amazed at how many programs there are out there And yet, how many people are falling through the cracks? So I'm going to throw that out there for you guys. Any insight into that?
Um, well, there's a lot of programs.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there for them. Um, but coming from the law enforcement background, they're afraid that if they reach out and ask for help, they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their badge, they're going to lose their gun, and they're going to, for a lot of them, they're going to lose their identity. And that's the culture that we have to change. And they don't trust their EAP programs.
Right.
You know, when I got shot, I had to go and meet with a counselor. And I got to say, there's a part of me that thinks that they were crazier than I was, you know?
Perfect.
And so it was like, tell me what I have to say so I don't have to come back again, sort of thing. So, because you didn't trust them. And that's just the way law enforcement is. And so we have to change that culture and provide them with the confidentiality that they need to be able to ask for help. And we're starting to do that. Departments are starting to recognize this. And we're actually getting that information out to officers. We just got to build the trust with those officers that this really is confidential and nobody is going to take your job or your badge or your gun, because you have to think about it. If, like, having come from the officer side and then the administrative side,
Right.
if somebody comes in to your office and says, I think I'm going to hurt myself, you have to act. You can't not do something, because now the responsibility falls on you as the administrator. And so we've got to figure out a way to get them help without them losing their jobs, without them losing their identities, and understand the cumulative stress of the job. All of those stressors make life very interesting for law enforcement officers and their families.
Absolutely.
And so we got to keep the families in mind here, because that's actually what our focus is the families. But
And after an officer dies by suicide, I know what in New Jersey that our benefits are for an officer that dies by suicide. And I know what it is for line of duty death. I assume that that is different in every state, and it could be depending on a department in a state. So that's got to be another hurdle for SPS, is to figure out what a widow is entitled to, because there's no PSOB money. Is kind of, how can we help on your guys' end? How do we help you with resources that are available, and what is and isn't available as far as death benefits when it comes to police pensions, when it comes to life insurance and that kind of stuff, whereas line of duty death is cleaner, shall we say. So if you guys want to address that, and Laurie, I'm thinking you're probably the first one in on that
Yep.
one. that probably
Yeah.
gets some really distraught calls, as compared to in the cops organization. You can certainly give some reassuring words when it comes to the finances. I can imagine that that's a different piece potentially for you to navigate, and correct me if I'm wrong with this. So
It is, you know, when I worked for cops, and it was always a very easy answer. When I worked for cops and law enforcement suicide survivors would call, they would say, what's for us, meaning programs. I have not been asked by a law enforcement suicide survivor about benefits.
wow.
No, it's not been a question that's been brought up to me. I know that some states have paid like workers' comp, or not workers' comp, but some kind of benefit
The
within
workers'
their
comp is-
state. Yeah. So some states are doing it. The federal level is not. SBS won't.
There's a bill right now that's there for PSOB money, potentially for officers that die by suicide. for Public Safety Support Act of 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Should
So,
get my
okay.
education.
Great. So that'll be an interesting bill to certainly watch and be able to
Yeah.
continue. And on your guys' end, I mean, it's just things are going to continue, hopefully to change.
I
So,
think the more people are talking about it, the more organizations that talk about suicide and, the more people that can get out there, I think the more willingness people are to talk about it and address it. We were just talking about officers. I was on a webinar the other day with over 1,100 officers, and the question was asked, the same question that you asked. Why doesn't anybody come forward? And the number one answer by over 80% of the participants was scared to lose their job. So,
I mean, I've absolutely seen that. I mean, it's almost a rhetorical question when it's asked.
yeah. And I think before even before on the federal level, you can address benefits. I think you have to address suicide and what's happening in the law enforcement community. I think so. That's nice.
Absolutely. What are you seeing as far as color? So you guys have only been doing this for about 6 weeks. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of feedback, what have you gotten? What kind of calls, if you don't mind sharing? Obviously nothing, specific, but kind of what the lay of the land looks like now and what you're hoping for it.
I think
personal level.
Some of the calls you can tell are feeling us out. Can I trust these ladies? Do they, what are they doing? What is this? Because they've had no other contact with anybody. I've spoken to spouses and parents that are I don't know any other spouses or parents. So, I mean, the common theme is just, they want to talk about it. Some of them have never talked about it. Some of them hide the fact that it happened and don't talk to their friends. They're isolated. They've isolated themselves and taken them out of their circles of friends and their families because of shame that's come across. And they want to talk about it, and they open up, and they've got the biggest hearts and the biggest love, but they're just thankful. I would say grateful that, someone, an organization is asking these questions and wanting to talk about it. I was on the phone with a mom, and she was like, I don't want to talk about my story. I want to talk about this organization. So it's testing the waters, So we're talking, and then 20 minutes goes by, and she told me her story. And that's the first time I've ever talked about it outside my family or my counselor. Because I think that's, in cops, people trust, it's been around forever. Starting from the ground, you have to build that. You have to, you have to listen when they want to talk, and you have to be patient when they don't. But connecting people together has been very popular thus far. But I would say probably the number one thing is shame. Nobody's ever asked them before. So them just sharing that little piece with us, it's an honor.
And
it is.
That is my experience. My experience also is not only that shame, but that being judged, the true secondary trauma of the judgment of,
Right.
If I'm the parent or if I'm the spouse or what have you, that I did something wrong. I mean, even children, where you'll hear that, they didn't feel that they were good enough to live for. Just all of this stuff that goes on, and that will be addressed obviously when you guys do your camps or what have you. And being able to have, when we talk about culturally competent therapists, it's one thing to have a culturally competent therapist when it comes to seeing the officer, but and you guys have incredible therapists, I know, through COPS that go to your retreats, that I am assuming that you're going to do the same thing for the retreats having to do with suicide survivors. So.
Yes, we're going to have we have a great team of counselors right now that are working on expanding the number that we have. And they're going to start vetting them, and then they're going to, once we decide how many we need and We're going to interview them all, and then they're going to be mentored by the ones that we currently have, because they are a very sound group that we have, and we need them to help us grow the number of supporters. We have 2 buttons on our website. I'm a survivor. Well, we have multiple buttons, but I'm a survivor and I'm a supporter. And we are getting equal number of forms from both. There is a huge amount of people out there that want to help these families. And we're working our way through them gradually as fast as we can, but not so fast that we're not making sure we're picking the right people. And so we're very excited about bringing on some new folks and having them mentor with the ones that we know are exceptional.
If you had a vision 5 years from now
Mhm.
of what your organization is going to look like. So give me 5 years from now with SPS. What does it look like?
5 years from now, we will have 13 retreats, 1 for every survivorship. Spouses, parents, kids, young adults, extended family, fiancés, significant others, coworkers, and so on. We would have a memorial service, a candlelight vigil, and a national conference. We're hoping to have that next year if COVID allows it. COVID controls about everything we do these days, but if COVID allows it, we want to have that. It'll be a small one next year because it's our first, but in 5 years, I expect it will be very large. We want to have a memorial for them, a place they can call their own. And, you know, you talked about how it's moving from suicide to possibly line of duty death. If that happens, you know, we'll jump on board with that. We're not against it. We're not going to fight for it to be line of duty death. Our focus is on taking care of the families. There are organizations out there that are making that push, but we are not. We just want to connect these families and provide them with the services that we offer.
No, I mean, I absolutely get that your lane. I mean, you know, each one of us kind of has a lane. You know, I know, when I run, you know, Copline, it's a very clear lane. All we are a hotline that is answered by retired, you know, vetted, trained, retired police officers. That's it. We don't do anything but that. And cops, and this was one of the things, you know, that when I had first connected with you, it's very clear what cops is and that mission, and that this could never fall under that organization just because of the mission that is there and what's set up. So to be able to have another organization, anybody that runs a not-for-profit knows what the bylaws have to look like and everything else when you set up a not-for-profit. Right. You have to stay to that mission and not veer. And I think that's really important, to kind of stay in your lane and being able to not waver. That you guys have a beautiful part that is truly missing right now in law enforcement, which is being able to take care of the families after the officer has made a decision that we hope that they never make. How they made that decision is not in your wheelhouse. It's not something that you're going to be dealing with. And you deal with kind of what the fallout is. And, you know, I remember listening to Dr. Scheinman saying that for every one suicide, at least 500 people are affected by one suicide. And when you look at law enforcement, I think it actually goes further than that. So being able to deal with all that is great. And I think you guys have a more daunting task. And, you know, Laurie, you had brought up, you know, just kind of quickly the workers' comp, which is kind of an interesting thing. I've been testifying on a case, not fun, and the judge it was a pissing match between me and the other party, but I believe I won the pissing match. However, let's just move
That's
on
awesome.
to that.
Good for you.
Go girl.
But the judge actually ended up having me come back into her chambers, because one of the things that had happened was that an officer had taken his life, and kind of the spouse had fought for workers' compensation. And anyway, make a long story short, it was given. And I'm sure you're Dr. John Violante. So Dr. Violante actually came down to testify on the case in Jersey for it. So kind of helping explore, which is kind of, I think, unique, rather than in a cop's situation where it's pretty well spelled out, but being able to help explore. And that's just going to be, I would think, sometimes a daunting task when it's asked of you. And Laura, you're going to be in those front lines about, what am I entitled to? In New Jersey, a lot of our officers don't pay into Social Security. So that the spouses aren't even, there's no Social Security death benefits. There's no SSD. So it's really kind of this huge breadth of knowledge. And then with the breadth of knowledge goes the depth of knowledge. So, so to really take care of the families is really kind of overwhelming. So there's no reason to get out of your lane, for God's sakes. There's plenty of shit in your lane. Right? There's all sorts of stuff you guys are going to be navigating.
Well, and coming from cops, we know our lane. We know line of duty death, and we know suicide. We know they're completely different. And, I'm not one that, when people out there that know me know that when you call me and you ask me a question, you're going to get an answer. So I'm the one that doesn't like to tell people just no. I like to say no, however, here's these things. And Social Security was brought up actually this week. And, I did find out in this particular state that they are receiving it for children, but there's so many, and sometimes you get like a little bit of life insurance or policy from, depending on the agency, probably bigger the agency, the more, payroll support you get, like you get a salary. It's difficult, but I think when I'm asked the question, it's, no, there's nothing out there. However, there are some police organizations. There are people that can help. And unfortunately, like one of those no's is going to be benefits. It's going to be hard.
It's like you said, though, there are some states that are starting to look at it, not so much as line of duty death, but work related, which is where workers' comp comes into play. And so that's one step towards helping those families that isn't classifying it as line of duty death. And law enforcement is not quite ready to call it a line of duty death. They're not. And I don't know if they'll ever get there or not. But again, that's not our lane. But calling it job related, I think is a step in the direction of helping the families without worrying about causing or giving an incentive for somebody to take their own life. So I think the states are gradually doing that, and they've been doing that gradually the last few years. And I think that will help the families. One thing I'd like to see is to help with the insurance. When an officer dies by suicide, or even in the line of duty, at the end of the month, their insurance is done. And if it's the day before the end of the month, and with dealing with all of this trauma right then and there,
absolutely,
and then having to worry about your family not having insurance in 2 days while you're trying to make funeral arrangements and do all of that, that's re-traumatizing them. And so it's making it even worse. So you asked where we'll be in 5 years. I hope we're somewhere that we can help with at least a month or two of insurance, not this organization paying for it, but the agencies or insurance companies stepping up and saying, hey, this is we'll donate this to the families.
Right, off of your premiums anyway, so.
Right, and so, I may be dreaming, but that's one of the things I'd like to see in 5 years, just so they have a chance to breathe before they have to make those decisions on, are they going to lose their house? Are they going to lose this? And oh my gosh, what am I going to do with the kids? And the reality is, you know, we always talk about, when we say families, we almost make it sound like we're talking about just spouses and the kids. But that's not the only people involved in this. There's all sorts of the siblings. My gosh, you know, they just lost a brother or sister. The grandparents, they just lost a grandchild. You know, an aunt and uncle, they lost a niece or a nephew or cousin or something. It impacts so many, like you said. I don't have the specific number like you have, but it impacts so many. And so our dream for that 5 years is to be able to reach out to all of them and be there for them.
It's really kind of heal it kind of in totality. I mean, and to be able to do that as a family, and kind of what all those tentacles, as you've pointed out, you know, where they reach, because they are far, far reaching.
Right.
And I think in a suicide, more than a line of duty death, is those shouldas, couldas, and wouldas. Is that, you know, what's left at the end of, you know, if I only would have made that phone call, if you know, there's all of that, which I think is different. So being able to have a safe place to kind of talk about it, process it, and to realize that this is really normal thinking. When you talk about, because as soon as you're talking about like insurance, thinking to myself, and not everybody has a union, but wouldn't it be lovely if part of the dues of a union added $10 a month or what have you, specifically for just medical benefits for survivorship, no matter what type of death, period.
To help extend that, just so they don't have to be thinking about that in the middle of trying to bury their loved one.
Because it sure as hell isn't going to bankrupt any one union to pay for an extra 30, you know, or 60 days, particularly if you're just taking it out of dues of $10 a month or $5 a month or what have you. Because, you know, thank God we don't experience a significant, I mean, any number is bad, but, you know, enough to bankrupt a system. But just thoughts like that, you know, Shelley, are just lovely. Just being able to think, you know, and like, what do they need? What are the immediate needs, so that we've got kind of plug in immediately, kind of that immediate, that, you know, 1 to 3 month, and then, you know, 3 and beyond, you know, and interestingly enough, I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder, you get 3 months to diagnose. Otherwise, it's acute stress disorder. So it's kind of like you're almost breaking up and triaging the same way that a clinician does, is what's imminent.
Right.
And then kind of what do we look at in the next 3 when we've got some breathing room.
Right. And
then kind of be able to go from there. So really, really important to be able to do that. Are you asking survivors for like immediate needs, or how are you getting that? Not that you don't have, obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge in this, but you know, that educated me. It's just, I guess if I would have sat back, but absolutely, clearly one of the main things.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Laurie. Nope. Go ahead, Laurie. Nope.
I was just going to say, like, you know, getting out there and being like so young, and SBS just coming out, and, you know, in the world of line of duty death, we were called immediately. And so immediate needs were always addressed. With SBS, you know, we haven't been out there very long for agencies to call us to say, you know, I have this family, here they are, I need you to talk to them. So, you know, adding on to the 5 years, I want every agency in this country to know we exist. I want every agency to have our phone number to be able to call after that loss and say, I have a family, I have coworkers, we need help. How do we do this? What are best practices? What are we looking at? I want an agency to stand up and say, I want to send officers in uniform to this funeral. I want to acknowledge that it happened. I want to bring awareness that it's okay to say the word suicide, and it's okay to say as an agency that you've lost an officer by suicide. I think that's huge in the next 5 years. I want everyone to know that we exist, because if they know, we can help. So right now, I would say if you're a survivor of law enforcement suicide, call us. Get on our website, reach out to us, spread the word, share the page, like Facebook, look at the website, just get it out there, because there's so many of people, so many survivors that we haven't even touched, that we don't even know, that we exist.
I know that right now we've got a couple survivors, their families watching this this Facebook Live. I had Cassie Amber, and I know that her in-laws are just huge on watching this, and have just been amazing as far as, helping, others to not go through what they've been through. And I'm really hoping that they also reach out for you guys to be able to continue to help spread the word, and make sure that what they experience, which I think was being quite alone, that they're not, that there are organizations. And I think that's really what I'm hearing you say, Laurie, is that you want organizations, you want all departments to know you're not alone, that these families are not alone.
You're not anymore. You don't want to be a part of this family, but we're family. We're the Blue family. And that's what it encompasses. Line of duty death, death by suicide, attacks on law enforcement, whatever it is, we're Blue family, but we're here and you're not alone. And you don't have to do this alone. And it is okay to talk about it. And we'll be here to listen. And we're going to keep fighting the good fight.
And it doesn't matter if it was 20 years ago. It doesn't matter if it's 15. It doesn't matter if it was 5 days ago. I have been to retreats with survivors that were 20 years out from their the end of watch. And so many of them say, I wish I had come sooner. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of healing out there to do for these survivors. So we're going to help with that.
There is.
We're going to be around for the long haul.
When cops got started, I assume that there's a tremendous learning curve and everything, and there's an expression which I do love, which is when you fall on your face, at least you're falling forwards. So I've fallen on my face many times, and that's how we learn. And you guys have a great foundation to spring from, which is of course cops, and then being able to kind of understand the nuances that are going to go along with this. And I really hope that you guys are able to publish also. There's so many law enforcement magazines and online issues and stuff that come out, that I think that's really important, because those are what our law enforcement officers see, and being able to help them understand and know what exists. Even their own, feelings of guilt or what have you, being able to call up and say, I'm struggling as a coworker. Shelley, when you were talking about Michael, I mean, you can see in your eyes, it's still painful. It's 13 years later. And when you're talking about, his family, and being able to just call and them responding or what have you, I can feel your heart when you talked about that, and kind of your own guilt with not having contact, and now being in this position, and yet how important it was to be able to reach out and deal with that. And I think you're the rule, not the exception to the rule, which is how many people have lost somebody to suicide and just maybe not knowing what to say, or what have you. So it's kind of easier to say nothing, let alone, like I talk about any death, what we typically do is we avoid it. And what we typically avoid is we don't want the person to be emotional, because a lot of times we don't know how to deal with the emotion. Whereas Laurie, you're right there front line on the emotion. But, I always say, if you call me up and you say, I'm sorry, I just heard about the loss of your mom. And if I get emotional, you didn't remind me that my mom was dead. I didn't forget, trust me.
Right.
It's really, and you didn't kill her. So it's really kind of understanding that I feel safe enough with you to emote. Right. Because if I don't do that, and I've got my tough chick thing going on, which I do with 99.9% of the world, kind of be grateful that I actually felt that I could kind of take off the armor to be
Right.
able to do that. So kind of looking at that hopefully a little differently. And sometimes it's really nice just to be real.
Right. And people are just afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing, or they don't know what to say, because nobody's talked about the circumstances, so they don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so if we start talking about it and start making people aware of what contributed to this. Not all suicides for law enforcement are job related. Let's be honest. Not all of them are. I would say a significant portion of them are, but not every one of them is. But you'll never really know what that cumulative stress did to make them do whatever happened without talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what this family went through, them talking about it may get this family to say, gee, my officer is acting that same way. Maybe I need to see what's going on.
Yep.
And so, it's just, you got to be aware, and if you can't be aware without talking.
Absolutely. So in closing, what is it that you guys want? I want to give you, a minute or so, each one of you. And again, my incredible gratitude for you guys coming on, for starting this not-for-profit, for being able to continue to help surviving families of suicide, of specifically law enforcement suicide. So I cannot truly thank you enough for doing this. So I want to kind of go back to you guys to just be able to wrap up.
I'll let you go first, Laurie.
First, it's an honor. It's an honor to, come on here and talk about it. So thank you for trusting us to come on and to talk about SBS and the important topics of law enforcement suicide. What I've said for 10 years, it's the honor of my life to be able to help law enforcement survivors. It's going to continue to be. I just want awareness. I want people to know that we're out there, and go to our website, pick up the phone, call us, share the information. Let's get it out there. Let's start helping people. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say thank you for having us. This is how we get the word out. This is how we make everyone aware that we exist, so that the families do reach out and come to us. And we are looking forward to the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and Laurie, the next 30 years. I'm way too old for that, but we're looking forward to that.
I don't have readers yet. So I'm still the young one. I don't have readers.
In cheaters is what we're looking
Yeah, I haven't graduated there yet. So I'm in for the long haul. We've got Shelley though for a while.
Yes, but not 30. I won't be around that long. But we are so looking forward to the future of this organization, and we're so looking forward to watching these families connect with each other and help each other and be there for each other. That's what's the most exciting for us, is what these families are going to be able to do for each other. Not what we're doing for them, but what they're going to be able to do for each other. So we're very excited about that. So just like Laurie said, go to our website, fill out the form, I am a survivor. We don't care if it was 20 years ago or 2 days ago. Just fill out the form and get in touch with us. We are doing virtual meetings with folks. We forgot to mention that. And if you sign up with us, we'll get you the information. So I know we're running out of time. So I wanted to make sure that we're doing virtual meetings where they can talk to each other, and also some educational. And we asked them what they needed, and they told us, and we're going to provide it.
Great. No, that's important. We always have time. We have time for
okay.
Make sure that we cover everything that you guys need to cover having to do with this. It's a incredibly important
yes.
topic and organization, and I refuse to rush anything. So
yeah, this is an organization for survivors. It's not about us.
Nope.
It's about the survivors. So it's their organization. It's what they want it to be. So
terrific. Thank you guys, and thank you for joining me for today. And next week, we're going to have a straight talk with Stephanie Samuels in it's going to be a special edition, actually. We're having Frank Shankowitz, who is the founder of Make-A-Wish Foundation. And
That's awesome.
If anybody has not seen the movie on Netflix, Wish Man, what very few people know, particularly in this country with all the upheaval, is that it was a police officer that started Make-A-Wish. And Frank had been an Arizona motorcycle cop, a highway patrol officer for many years, and kind of had an incredible career. And his story is one that is so truly unique that if you watch one movie, and anybody that's going to be watching next week, because we're going to have Frank on, going to allow for more than an hour, I'm going to let him go, but truly one of my heroes. He'll probably tell me that he's no hero, but to found an organization that has done so much good.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So
those motor cops are amazing. That's all I'm going to say.
There you go. It's one of yours that started Make-A-Wish.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm hoping that everybody goes ahead and watches on Netflix before next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Straight Talk with Stephanie Samuels and Frank Shankowitz. So very exciting. And thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for all that you guys are doing to be part of the solution. And that's what I do the podcast for, is to make sure that we are connecting all the resources that we have and becoming part of the solution, because God knows they need us now more than ever.
Absolutely.
Yes,
all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.